Okay, now we're being recorded. Okay, so as I was saying, the literature review and academic writing are very connected because when you're doing a literature review, you're academically writing. I mean, that's somewhat synonymous in a lot of places. They think of academic writing as writing literature review type material. And certainly literature review a great deal of synthesis and evaluation in writing, and we require synthesis and evaluation in your writing here at CityU. So the two things kind of ultimately go hand in hand. Um, is the literature review a harder example of writing than, say, writing a paper for class? Yes, definitely. The literature review can be exceedingly challenging um, for some. And again, I say that with a grain of salt because for me it was very, very challenging, but it was because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand what my professor wanted me to do, what it all meant. And later, I was able to kind of get a better sense of what a literature review and how it should be used. Once I got that sense of it, boom, I was able to crank a literature review out really quickly. Because ultimately, we're all going to be familiar with our literature because we're going to have been living with it for some time. And honestly, when you have read an article and you've made notes from it and you've used it in a paper for class, and you tend to know that article, so you know I'm going to go to this article for this information. Just a quick poll. Not sure that we can do polls. We can't do polls in the way that I would normally do a poll, but just a quick poll in the chat feature, if you'll open that. How many of you have some kind of citation management software? That could be Zotero, it could be EndNote, it could be Mendeley. Just chime in if you have, or just say, I don't have a software management tool at this time. Okay, Jeff, you're on Mendeley. That's great. Okay, Denise, don't have any right now. Daria uses Zotero. Been using Word as your citation manager. That has some limitations for sure. So what I would strongly suggest for everyone is to get a citation manager now. If you're in the research core, you're getting close to the end of your program, it's very easy to forget the different articles you've used in different classes. It's very easy to gloss over and put those out of your mind. But they will come back up again. Everything you've read should never go to waste. And the way to capture that information is by using some kind of software. Zotero is free. I highly recommend Zotero. Mendeley, I believe, has a free and a charge component to it. I think to get full functionality, though, you have to pay. Am I right about that, Jeff? Or Sophia? Do you know, is Mendeley free or completely, or do you have to pay? Okay, so yeah. So I know you can get it for free. I personally like Zotero because of how well it's integrated into Firefox. So you can be searching for an article, and when that PDF comes up, you just export it to Zotero. It all stays in Zotero. So the PDF lives there, the citation lives there, you can make notes on it. So I'm a big Zotero fan, and we'll do a Zotero webinar soon because I've got a few people that are beginning to use it, and I want to help people with that. But either way, the idea is to capture all of these things together. So to start off, before I go into my rant about literature reviews and academic writing, does anybody have any initial questions that they have about a literature review? I don't want to do all the talking. And again, you can type it in the chat. You can also turn on your microphone to try to speak it. Though make sure I can hear you, because sometimes I can't. I think I am getting a feedback loop from, I would imagine it's from Denise. Denise, could you mute your microphone? Okay, we have our first question. So let's talk about that first question. Is the literature review only multiple authors' ideas? The answer to that question, Daria, is essentially yes. A literature review is built off of the literature. It's basically, as that corny as that sounds, it is a review of the literature. So it's a review of all authors who have written about your topic. It's a review of them both in the past and currently, though you need to keep about 80% of your references within the last 5 years. So you can go back and get some of the foundational work, but that should only be about 20% of your work. And then from there, you move on to gathering more current information about your topic. But the literature review is only work and ideas from other authors. Now, where is your voice in that? Is, I think, a sub question that you might be having here. And that's really the art of the literature, because your voice comes in how you use the author's work. How are you carrying them together? How are you mixing them together? What are the themes you're creating from the literature? Those ideas, the themes, which is why we're doing themes in discussion boards, the themes that you create from the literature, the way that you use it in the literature review, that you compare them together so you can say one person stinks, the other person's great. All of those things add up to become what is a literature review. But it's all from your brain. It's all from you. So while you don't actually say, I like this article, I hate this article in a literature review, by talking about the articles and saying how they compare to each other, you're in essence saying what you liked and what you didn't like. So your voice there, but it's behind the scenes. You're like the puppet master, manipulating the work of others to say what you want it to say to get your idea across. Does that answer your question, Daria? And then we also have a question from Sophia. At the stage in learning that involves taking in as much information as possible, do we know enough to ask questions? And that is a very good question. It's a meta question. Thank you, Sophia. I think what you're saying is maybe you meant at this stage in learning, or at any stage where you're taking in information, do you know enough to ask questions? And that's really the key. You most likely won't, which is why when you're doing your dissertation, you have a chair, and your chair is reading your work, and your chair is giving you feedback, and through that feedback, you're learning from the chair what is important, what's not important, what should be included, what should not be included. And that's how you learn to do the literature review, ultimately. And that's what a chair is for. At this stage in the game, you're really just trying to understand how these things are put together, how they are used. And then as you go on, you'll learn more about, and then you'll probably have a lot more questions, so we can do this again at some point. Okay. Poor Lewis still has not been able to join. Wish I could make it easier for him. Okay. So let's move on. I need to pull up my there we go. Okay. So I'm not going to go over all of the different slides in this presentation because I've recorded this presentation. You can actually watch it on video. I want to really go into what is important for a literature review in academic writing. And a couple of things. One is academic writing must be supported. Sorry about that. I'm moving the microphone so it may be noisy. Okay. Academic writing must be supported. And this is where I've commented on some of your discussion boards where the introduction will get you into so much trouble because it's often in the introduction that we just want to make these grand sweeping statements. All teachers know the benefit of using Zotero in their classrooms. Well, that may be your opinion, and you may have even experienced that in your life, but a statement like that is unsupportable by fact. There's no way that you could know what all teachers do. There's no way that you could even know that a majority of teachers do that. And so you have to really stay away from sweeping generalizations. Instead, you set up your work by using the authors to set it up. You talk about the research, and then you use the research in your work. Like the research becomes what you're saying. And you do this through the use of citations and through the use of the author as in the sentence. So you can either say Rankin 2015 says that Zotero is a great tool to use, or you can say Zotero is a great tool to use, Rankin 2015, in parentheses at the end of the sentence. Using the author's name kind of shifts from who's talking. And so when you make your points that you're trying to kind of get your point across, you may want to use an in citation so it sounds more like it's coming from the author. It gives the reader more of a sense that this is what you're trying to say. But you have to support it with a citation. You have to support it with that author's information. In a literature review, you're also going to be combining several authors together. And you can do this in a sentence, but be careful again about making sweep. The research, if you say something like, the research indicates that Zotero is the best best reference manager to use. And then you cite Rankin, Flores, whatever, the 3 articles. That's only 3 articles. So is it all the research in the world that shows that, or is it just these 3 articles? So you could say some authors suggest that Zotero is the best one to use. You want to be precise. Precision is really important in this process because we want to be precise and we want to say what we mean and not what we're trying to get across. And that's why when I was talking about your themes, one of the things I was trying to say is don't directly say your theme to the reader, but you still need to use the words of your theme. That needs to be your branding, but you don't come right out and say my theme is. That's not kind of the way academic writing works. Your theme comes through with what you're saying. Typically, you won't be writing themes for every paragraph or themes for every section of your work, but that's what you should be thinking about. What is the theme of this section of this paper? How are these themes coming together to be the outline of my literature review? How are they presenting my ideas? So that is essentially what you're trying to do in your work, is present things in a way that the reader makes sense of it. And in the end, the reader is convinced that your research is a good thing to do, that there's a need for it, that nobody else has ever done it, and that it's going to be valuable to the world. So those are, in any dissertation, or any research article, to be honest with you, those are the 3 things that a lit review is supposed to do. You want to know, has anyone done this before? Or is it a new subject? You want to know, why should I be doing this? What's led me to this point? What other authors have done work around this idea that's led me to this point? And then 3, who is this going to help? Why is this important that I'm doing this research? Because we may want to know what a typical third grade teacher's favorite color is, but how is that going to help us? How is that going to help anyone else in the world? I mean, it may be interesting information and we may be like, that's really cool, but we really don't need to know. It's not essential to knowing to do anything that's going to be helpful for the teachers or for the students. So again, you have to present in your literature review what it is you think that everyone should know. Now, I presented these slides before, and I want to talk a little bit about them just in the way that it makes the literature work, and then we'll look at some examples. But the idea in Bloom's taxonomy is that as students develop from high school to college to grad school, you inevitably move to higher levels of analysis or higher levels of thinking about writing. Typically, when you're designing courses, you think at a bachelor's level, students should be doing the basic levels, application and analysis. Applications is somebody says, paint the color purple, you go out and paint the color purple. In a most common sense, it would be like, find me a citation that says the sky is blue. So you go out, you find a citation, or it may be in your textbook, and you say, Northhouse 2015 says the sky is blue. That's the application. I'm answering a question with data that I've dug up. Analysis, however, is getting a little bit deeper. Analysis is when you start to break things apart to realize how they come together. So if I ask you to do research on the sky being blue, you might do several different types of research to figure out more about the sky, more about the way that the light is seen by the eye. So you may even bring in some information about eyes and how eyes perceive color. You pull that apart, and that's analysis, and you look at the component parts. When you're doing the higher levels of taxonomy, when you're doing synthesis and evaluation, you're really trying to make new things. And that's the hardest part that people try to miss with synthesis and evaluation. You're not just reciting things from other people. You're not just creating a list of facts. So you don't go out and you say, okay, I need to prove that mixed methods is the best type of methodology. So I'm going to go to Creswell because he talks about mixed methods. I'm going to go to Patton because Patton talks about mixed methods. And I'm going to go to Merriam because she talks about mixed methods. And I'm going to find a quote from each of those things to put into this assignment. Ultimately, that is analysis. You're not creating anything new. Synthesis is pulling things together to create an idea or to back up an idea that you have that really is not directly said in one or the other of these sources. So I'm going to pull together some things that Patton says, some things that Creswell says, and I'm going to create a new idea, a new way of looking at mixed methods that neither of them came to on their own, but I can pull them together to create that. Or I can pull together several authors to show that a lot of people agree that this is the right way. The idea that a lot of people agree about it is the new thing you created with your synthesis. Now, what is evaluation then is telling us why. Why are you using these things? Why are they important? And I can tell you now, Dr. Flores is integrating this into the 606 class. Students coming up behind you will definitely be able to recite this to you of what I'm telling you now that you may be a new idea. And that's, again, we need to know why you are using the literature you're using. Why is it important? Are they foundational? Do they relate to one another? Is one the other? That's the evaluation part, and that's the part that you've been doing when you picked apart the articles in the first three, in the 3 discussion boards about methodology, is you're trying to evaluate, is it a good article? Is it important? How many of you, show of hands, you could click the raise hand button, I think that will work. How many of you, this is still kind of a new practice to me, how many of you know what Google Scholar is and have used it before? Jeff, okay, great. Daria, wonderful. I think only one person can raise their hand at a time, it looks like. So Daria, Jeff, good. Sophia, Denise, you may want to comment in the chat box if you can't get the hand raising thing to work. So what I want to do now is I want to show you, okay, great, good. We have 2 newbies and 2 Google Scholar users. So let's explore Google Scholar. Make sure, yep, okay. I'm going to share with you. Bum, bum, bum. Sure, Daria, just type in the question, and when I get to the break, I will also talk to you about that. I'll talk to you about synthesis. Okay, and your question should pop up. So when it pops up, I'll answer it definitely. And I can go back to the slide presentation if you need me to. Okay. All right. So Google Scholar is a subset of Google, and it's specifically designed to search for academic work, not general websites. So if I'm on Google Scholar and I want to search something like transformational leadership, I spell transformational wrong? That is wrong. I'm a horrible speller, so nope, I spelled it right. And I search on that, it's going to bring up academic articles about transformational leadership. Let me run quickly and answer Daria's question. Boop, 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 boop. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So when combining authors' ideas to create a new idea, is the new idea then in your voice? Does it need a citation? Good question, Daria. The new idea comes from the authors, so it's from the authors. It's not in your voice. You're not saying that is the new idea, but you may or may not need to cite it. So if you're making a point and you cite Rankin says that transformational leadership works really well in a business, Flores says transformational leadership really works well in education, Daria says transformational leadership works in education and in businesses. Therefore, transformational leadership will be the best theory to use for this research. So that last sentence doesn't need to be cited because you're discussing the research that was previously presented. It would not need to be cited, and in some ways it's in your voice, but you don't say, I think, or obviously in third person the author thinks, or whatever. What you're just saying is, this has shown this, and therefore this is the way it is. And you can only say that after you have presented the research. Some people like to do it first and say, transformational leadership can be used in business and in schools. Rankin says it can be used in business. Flores says it can be used in schools. The problem with this is you put the cart now before the horse. And any reader that's an academic is going to immediately be like, oh, you can't say that, it's unsubstantiated. You don't have a citation for that. And I have an example of this later, Daria, too, that I can show you. Did that help? Did that answer your question? Okay, let's go back to sharing our... Going down the rabbit hole. Okay, now, this is Google Scholar. So let me tell you some wonderful, exciting things about Google Scholar. Number one, not all the articles on Google Scholar can you access. That's the number one thing that makes people most frustrated, is they're like, I found a great article on Google Scholar, but our library doesn't have it. Or I can't click on it on Google Scholar. Well, the truth is that most everything you'll find on Google Scholar, our library does have. It's very rare that it doesn't. But there are that you can't get, and you're just going to have to say, okay, I'm just going to have to find another resource. But the thing that says PDF next to it, you see this little PDF here in brackets, that means it is available. You can click on that, and bang, it's going to take you to the PDF. So that means it's free and available for you to use. Now, here's some things that we love about Google Scholar. Google Scholar, so here's an article, Effectiveness Correlates of Transformational and Transactional Leadership, a meta-analytic review of the MLK literature. Lord help us. Some people think a study is actually a literature review, which it can be. Not always the best. But here's the deal. This has been cited by 2,648 people. Guess what? It was written in 1996, so it obviously has lasted for some time, and it's obviously well cited. That means that it's probably an important article. This Bernard Bass down here, from transactional to transformational leadership, Bernard Bass is actually the guy that invented transformational leadership, one of the guys. 3,540 citations. This book down here by him, 5,319 citations since 2006. So clearly, very well cited. This tells you how important articles are. It tells you, are they important in your field? You can also select a custom range. So, for example, we only want to use literature within the last 5 years. So let's see, that's 2012, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, so 2012. Only click literature since 2012. Easy peasy. Now we only see the literature that is in the last 5 years, so we know we're getting up-to-date literature. Here's another amazing thing. So let's say I really want to talk about transformational and charismatic leadership. And I have this idea here, but this is a book, and I can't really get a... Well, you go down here to related articles, you click on related articles, and it pulls up other articles that are related to the topic that is from that article. Sometimes these are good, sometimes they're not, but it's a way to really deeply dive very quickly into a subject. As soon as you find an article that is what you're interested in talking about, click on the related articles and see what you find. The same is true, you can also click on the citations and see who has cited this article. The people who are citing this article may actually be people you want to cite as well. So those are some of the wonderful things about Google Scholar that you just don't get on our library's website because it just doesn't have the relational database that this does. Remember that if there says PDF over here, that means you can get it. Now I'm on a CityU I am on a CityU internet, so it also says if I can get it at CityU, and I can click on this, and it should take me to our library. Boom, boom, boom. It's looking for items. It's looking, and boom, there it is in our library. I can get it now. I just log into CityU to my thing, and boom, there it is. Full text, everything from our library. So that is also a thing. Now, I believe sometimes if you are logged into CityU's library already and you go to Google Scholar will know it. I can't tell you that for a fact, but that has happened to me at home. I have seen this get it at CityU, so that is a possibility that if you're logged into CityU through your Blackboard account or through your library account, that it may still know that and then be able to pull these up. Don't quote me on that, though. But that's Google Scholar, and this kind of starts to tell you about the relationship between articles. You know, how important are they? Who's citing them? How new are they? These are things that you can immediately see when you're looking at it from a Google Scholar standpoint to kind of see what's going on with the articles. Does that make sense to everybody? Are we all happy about that? Great. Let's see. Yep. Yes. Awesome. Oh, Jeff keeps popping in and out. Probably internet connections too, bandwidth availability. So Google Scholar is really helpful in understanding the relation of literature to the world. Now, I wish Heather had come here because Heather had brought up in her assignment this week that she was very frustrated because it was really hard for her to find articles about her topic. How many of you here were frustrated about finding articles on your topic? Anybody? Hey, Jeff, welcome back. We're talking about whether or not you were frustrated finding articles for your topic for the assignments in the discussion boards or the assignment that was due this last week. Because Heather did voice that she was frustrated by that. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that and how it relates to literature reviews. Okay. Everybody still with me? I want to make sure that I'm not losing you all. If I start to go down a rabbit hole that you're not interested in, you're welcome to say, hey, what does that have to do with literature reviews? So please feel free to call me on it. Okay, so let's go back to screen sharing and go down the rabbit hole again. Boom, 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 boom. And I want to share you. Yep. Okay. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about Venn diagrams. Now, this is one of my things that helped me with my dissertation, and I really feel like it was a lifesaver in a lot of ways for me. We all probably seen the concept of Venn diagrams. You have a circle here that represents fish. You have a circle here that represents whales. What are the things that these two circles have in common? That's the ocean. Both fish and whales live in water. Both fish and whales have fins. Both fish and whales can swim. So we look at these things that are in common in the middle, and those are the overlap of the circles. Now, for a literature review, typically what I tell students is you need 3 circles. And in the case of a literature review, the 3 circles are the big 3 ideas around your topic. So one of you, tell me what your topic was from this week. I want to Venn diagram it. Let me zoom back to the classroom. Anybody? Topic for me? I'm wondering how much of a delay there is in this, as of course opposed to people also typing. The double delay. While you're doing that, I am going to draw 1 circle, 2 circles, 3 circles. Let's move them to where I want them to be. Aha! We have liftoff. Okay, Daria, good call here. Let's move this here. Let's move this. It's not cooperating with me. Alrighty then. Now, Daria says, low teacher expectations for African American males as a predictor for poor academic achievement. Okay, let's break this down into 3 circles of data that we would look at this topic for. We can say that one of the areas of data could be teacher expectations of students. Then another topic area could be African, I'm just going to say AA, African American students' experience in the classroom. Again, these are long. Normally, you try to kind of just have 1 sentence for an idea. Oops, hold on. Boom. And then the third circle could be student achievement. Why can't I spell today of all days? There we go, achievement. Okay. Now, Daria, would you say that that these three topics could represent the main ideas from your topic, the larger, broader main ideas of your topic? Okay, great. So these are the three main ideas that we're dealing with here. Now, this center area here, let's make it a different color. This center area here is your topic. And for your dissertation, let me draw it in a little better. I'm using a mouse. For your dissertation, this center area should have very little or no literature. This is a black hole. This is the hole that you're going to fill with your research. So this is what you're actually going to research and find the answer to. Okay? Now, what is your literature review going to be then? Because there's no information in this middle hole. Well, good question. The literature review, pointer. Okay, so there's no information in this black hole area. So where is your literature review going to come from? I would ask that rhetorically, but I know that we might have a little bit of a lag. I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from these areas in here. This is your literature review. That right there, this right here, and this right here. So you might find articles that talk about teachers' expectations of students and how African American students experiences in the classroom combined together. So you may find articles about how teachers' expectations affect students' experience. You may find articles about African American students and their achievement in school. And you may find articles about teachers' expectations and student achievement. So you may find articles in these zones. This would be your literature review. And you all of these together to then say, but no one or very few people have studied the effect of teachers' expectations on African American students in student achievement. So this plus this plus this equals that, and that's what you're going to study. So your literature review is these three areas coming together to show the reader what this middle area is. Does that make sense? Great. Denise, Sophia, Jeff? Okay, great. So what happens when you're doing a literature review is you may find 1 or 2 articles in this area. You may find 10 articles in this area and 100 articles in this area. So this area that you only find 1 or 2 articles, that means you might need to pull out from it and find articles that are only about African American students' experience, or find articles that are only about student achievement. So when you have limited options in the middle, in this middle zone, you may have to pull back out to the broader literature to find articles that you can use. They just will need to be better. They'll need to have a stronger connection. So you have to really show, it's not really helping, is it? You have to really show how this connects to this and how this connects to this. So you really have to show that in your writing. If it already connects, you don't have to, it's no big deal. It already shows you these 2 connections. Then what you're doing is connecting these to this. So if they both connect, if you have two of the three topics in the article, then you have enough information to start pointing towards what's missing. This is the darkness. This is the area that we don't know anything about. And what I would typically do or say to do is, like, for this, I would probably limit this to, you could limit this in like when you're thinking about it conceptually, you could just limit it to African American students. You could limit this to teachers' expectations, and you can limit student achievement is good for this one because that is a pretty compact word. The more compact you can get your topic, the broad topic areas, the easier you're going to be able to find literature that connects the two together. And it's the connection of the two that where the article comes from. Obviously, you be talking about teachers' expectations of their principal if you're also trying to find a connection to student achievement or a connection to African American students. You wouldn't be talking about African American students in art class if you're looking at their achievement. So, automatically by trying to connect these two keywords. So what I would do in my search function is I would search for this plus this, and then I would do another search for this plus this. I would do a search for, these two together, and then I would have a search where I search for all three. And the search for all three, I should have said this before, the search for all three should be the first thing that you do. Because if you can find articles that already answer these three things, then you have nothing to research for your dissertation. Because somebody already answered it. Somebody already looked at teacher expectations on student achievement. Now, maybe you're going to look at it in a different way. But if you're going to look at it in a different way, then that kind of bends the circles a little bit. You're still going to need to find this juicy center that nobody has looked at. So that your center may get smaller if people have already been studying this area. But overall, you're going to find the place that nobody's looked at before. Okay, so that's the Venn diagrams. And Venn diagrams are great. They've saved me tons and tons and tons and tons of trouble. The other thing that really helped me is mind mapping. And I'm not sure if any of you have experienced mind mapping. I'm pretty sure I talked about it. I presented a video on it. But it's the basic idea of connecting your topics together. So you have one theme here. You have a theme here. You have a theme here. How are they connected to one another? So is this connected to this? Is this connected to this? Is this connected to something over here? How are you going to arrange these? Then this may connect over here to this. How are you going to arrange this? How are you going to present this data? And that's what mind mapping does, because it allows you to start moving things to where you want to present them. And it also shows you where there's an article that you need to find because you don't know it. And you can move these around. If you get a software package, you can move around the circles, to put them someplace else. You can build hierarchies. You can make some circles bigger than others. If they have a lot of data, you may want to make them really big. If they don't, then you want to make them small. Mind mapping gives you a visual presentation of your themes and the ideas that you want to present. And you can also put in the articles that are connected to those themes. Good question, Daria. Your question is, in the three-circle Venn diagram, should you have a balanced number of articles in each colored area? The answer to that is no. The answer to that is it's whatever is natural. You may only have 2 or 3 articles in one of the colors, but that area is going to be considered weaker in your literature review, so you're going to have to bring in other sources to support it. And that's where you start pulling in articles from a broader sense to kind of support what it is you're saying, because you don't have enough articles that say it directly, so you're going to pull in things, synthesize them together to say it for you. And that's where synthesis comes in, because synthesis is pulling these things together to say these things that maybe you couldn't find an article that said. Okay, hopefully that was clear. Okay, let's share this file again. Okay, And synthesis is writing based on themes rather than on source articles. Using synthesis, students are not just sequentially presenting articles, but using the main points throughout the paper. Students apply points from the articles to arguments and ideas of their own organizational scheme to direct the flow, the narrative. It's your story that you're telling. You're just using other people's information to tell it. I'm Southern. We gossip all the time. That's what gossip is. You use other people's sources to create a new story that you're telling and taking credit for telling. And you're basically capturing other people's lives and making them into a story that you contrive on your own. So it's a natural skill if you're from the South, but otherwise you have to learn it. Ideas and points from various sources come together to support your theme and point to a larger theme. Evaluation is evaluating the writing within your theme to present an argument that's grounded in the literature. You go beyond using the sources just to make a point, but instead you're evaluating them for their strengths or weaknesses, or support your argument or reject your argument. So the idea then is that the reader can draw their conclusions based on how you're presenting the information to them, and their conclusion should be your conclusion, the conclusion you want them to do. If you're doing a good job, then you are actually going to change their mind. Is that clear? Anybody have any question? Okay, good. All right. We've got about 10 more minutes left. I want to go over a few more things here. So let's see, Daria says, so is the, there we go. Daria says, so is the info you pull into the literature review from the findings section of each article? It could be from the findings, yes. The problem is you can't use the literature review because they're citing other people, and you cannot cite someone citing someone else. So you can use their literature review to find the articles they're talking about and use them yourself, but you cannot cite someone else's citation. So again, go to the source article, use the literature review to give you an idea of what's going on, but yes, it's the findings section of the articles that you're using to make your point. You're not using the literature review section of the article. The literature review section can give you information and tell you other sources to go find information at, but it cannot not be a main source of a citation, because you're not going to be able to use it that way. Okay, so some things that we need to talk about. Weasel words. These are words that are inserted to try to persuade someone using these kind of basically word wrangles to be emotional, to appeal to the reader. The first one, it's perfectly obvious to anyone with a modicum of sense that the UK has never had such an incompetent prime minister. That is a complete opinion statement. You all know better than doing that, I'm sure. But there's other things. One of the reasons we don't allow students to write in first person is because you do things like, we can't go on using up the Earth's resources. Well, who's we? You know, are you talking about you and your friends? Are you talking about everybody in the world? You have to be careful about your word choice. So try to be careful not to use words like clearly, obviously, without doubt. Academic writing should always have an air of tentativeness in it. So you should be tentative in your writing. Never make a direct statement. It may be, some research shows, don't make these grand statements like I was talking before. Okay, let's look at this one. Oops, it keeps moving me around. Here's the difference between an argument and an assertion. An assertion is an unsupported statement. When I tag your work and I say, you need a citation here, that's when you are making an assertion. You're saying between 1945 and 1980, the Australian Senate prevented the Labour Party from governing effectively by failing to pass important legislation. You may have read that, you may know that, but you're not citing it, so it's unsupported. So what typically then happens is you get students to do a supported citation. They put a citation at the end of the sentence. Now, this is a fact that you've now supported with your citation. Okay, you presented it. But you're not telling me anything. You're telling me this fact. So what does this fact mean? Why are you using this fact? What is the importance of this fact that you've just presented me? The final paragraph here is an argument. It's an effective way of using it. And this has gone out in the newsletters too, so I'm sorry if it's review for everyone. But between 1945 and 1980, the Australian Senate prevented the Labour Party from governing effectively by persistently failing to pass important legislation. So this is one of those setting the apple before the cart, the horse before the cart before the horse situations. They said their opinion first, but now they're going to support it. But it's still making an argument. For instance, in 1974, the Senate blocked 80 pieces of important legislation. Brown's analysis of the Senate showed that blah, 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 blah. So I'm making a clear, so I'm doing more than just citing a fact. And that's what we want to see you doing, especially in a lit review. Another enemy of the lit review writer is wordiness. You may often find that there are a number of words contained in your writing that can be safely eliminated without any kind of danger to whatsoever. This is a beautiful sentence. I'm a creative writer by nature. This sentence, I love this sentence. It's great. I use it all the time, these extra words. But really, all you're saying is you may find words that can be eliminated without any danger to your meaning. That's what you're saying. The words in black here are words that you needed to say that point. You didn't need those other words. Cut them out. Cut, 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 cut. Literature reviews are just the important information that you're trying to use to make your argument. Don't put in extra words. Don't put in flowery statements. Don't bring in any of this other kind of stuff that's not needed. If you can say the point in a one sentence, then say it in one sentence. You'll just need some transitions to set that sentence up, but that's all you need. Here's some more examples of the wordiness part. Think about, alternative choices, alternatives, actual experience. You can just say experience. Various differences. Various implies differences, so you don't need to use both words. Also avoid sentences with linking words such as but, and, or yet. These are all just academic writing things, and I got them from these sources. I can make the PowerPoint available to you later. Now, putting words in the author's mouth. This is often something that people do all the time in their writing, and this is something that I think most of you, I've seen at least, are staying away from. So I'm glad to see that in this class. And it's putting words into the author's mouth. So you say the room was painted blue because the sky is blue. Rankin 2015. The reason that's wrong is Rankin didn't talk about your room. He didn't even talk about painting. Instead, you need to say what the author said, then talk about it. Rankin 2015 said the sky is blue. The room was painted blue to look like the sky. I'm now very clearly differentiating from what I'm trying to say and what the author said. Remember, don't put words in the author's mouth. Use authors to make a point, but don't change their word around, or don't combine 6 authors together and say they said something when they didn't all say that. That's the whole idea behind getting you to do this theme analysis, because I really want you to be looking at all of these authors and thinking, what is the thing they all have in common? How are they pulling that together? And that's really important there. Okay. We could talk a little bit about hidden assumptions, but parallelism, these are all writing things. Checklist for a good argument. No, we went over that. We went over that. Da, 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 da. Okay, one thing about a literature review is that you may really, when you're doing a literature review, and I have a slide for this, hold on one moment. There we go. When you're doing a literature review, one way to really grasp an author's argument is to write it as a syllogism. Syllogism. Does anybody know what a syllogism is? I had to look it up myself too. Here's what we found, and I will go here. I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to share my screen once again. Okay. Syllogism. Let's go to Wikipedia. We all love Wikipedia. And have I ever told y'all my opinion about Wikipedia? You should never ever cite Wikipedia, but I always start at Wikipedia because I want to get a good overall view of the topic. Then from Wikipedia, I kind of know where I need to go next and what I need to do to find academic articles to support my idea. So a syllogism, let's see, what is the actual pronouncement? Syllogism. Doesn't have the pronouncement. Okay. So the idea here is that you're looking at what is the major premise of the article, what's the minor premise, and what was their conclusion. So what you want to do is you want to see how they're making their point. How do these points are making together? And then you want to avoid ideas that you want to avoid fake syllogisms where what you're putting together doesn't actually make sense. So all humans are mortal, all Greeks are humans, all Greeks are mortal. That's kind of like the way the author connected the 2 points together. All mortals die, all men are mortals, all men die. That kind of idea. But you can also, do this in a negative way. Let's go back to our slide projection, our slideshow. Because you can miss the point of the author and then not use the author's work properly. And that's where thinking about what was the argument they made comes in handy, it becomes important. And that's why I'm kind of having you pick apart these articles, because you really want to look at why the author made that point and what it is what was it that they were trying to say. And the one thing that I want to impart on you before we go is that in your lifetime, you should never have to read an article more than one time. You're going to be reading 100 to 200 articles for your dissertation, maybe even more. You do not have the time or the energy to go back and reread an article over and over again. And that's where you need some kind of citation manager. So what I did in my dissertation was let's go back to my video since I'm just going to babble for a minute now. What I did in my dissertation is that I used my iPad and the app Goodreader to take the PDF and highlight all of the important passages in that PDF. Goodreader then let me export all of those passages to one email. I then copy and pasted that email into the notes in Zotero, and now I had a searchable index of all the quotes that were important from that article. And any quote, any paragraph, or any section that was important, I would cut and paste it into Zotero. So then when I'm doing my dissertation and I'm in my literature review and I'm making I'm discussing boundaries and I'm saying, boundaries in the workplace. I need a citation about boundaries in the workplace. I go to Zotero, I type boundaries workplace. It reads through all of my notes and it finds any articles that talk about both boundaries and workplaces. Saved me a ton of time. Some people do it the old-fashioned way. They make note cards and they write out the notes from their articles. What I started to do initially when I was starting my dissertation, before I found out about Zotero, I would just write a summary at the very top of the article. And then I had a file folder, and right here. See, my dissertation. These are all the articles I initially was reading for my dissertation. And what I did is I put them into categories that I knew of what I wanted to do. So say I was looking at job satisfaction. So I took all the articles about job satisfaction and put them into one area. And you can see possibly on this, I made a note about it and I rated it, whether it was A, B, C, or D, meaning it was a good article, not a good article, whatever. However, I soon quickly found that I was still going back and having to reread articles to find what I was talking about over and over. So I ended up going to Zotero, where I could actually cut and paste the information into the notes section. And you can do this in Mendeley, you can do this in EndNote, as long as they offer you a search feature. So now I have 100 citations in my Zotero, 100 different articles. Each article has the abstract copy and pasted into it, has all the notes that I took from the article. And now I just search for whatever it is I'm looking for, and I have 100 articles database that goes back and forth and tells me what articles I can use to make the point I'm going to make at that particular segment. So I suggest strongly is while you're working through the research cycle and any other classes you may be taking, that you start to put your articles together and organize them in some way. This will help you. And keep in mind, you never want to read an article more than once. So take good notes, highlight whatever you need to do, but you don't want to read the whole article ever again. You may go back and look at your highlights. If you're a paper person and want to keep papers, you may go back and look at your highlights, but you never want to read that article again. So keep that in mind. Also, scan articles when you're reading them. You don't need to read an article in depth every time. Read the sections of the article that apply to the topic you're thinking about. Don't read the literature review unless you want to learn more about the topic and see what other sources that person is citing. Go straight to the findings. Look at the methodology if you need to see if it was a good study. That's all you really need to do. You can read through, typically, because if a writer is good, the first sentence of every paragraph is the theme of that paragraph. So you can go through and read the first sentences of every paragraph in the article and get a very good idea of what they were talking about. That's a well-written article. If you can read the first sentence in every paragraph and really know exactly what was said, that's a good article. That's the way it should be, because the reader was the author was guiding the reader through using transition sentences. So I typically could do that and just kind of scan through, and I'm like, nope, I'm not reading this paragraph. No, I'm not reading this paragraph. No, okay, yes, this is interesting. Let me read this. Okay, yes, copy, paste into my notes, whatever, blah, 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 blah. So those are my summary of that. Let's see, Daria has a question here. I love the idea of not reading articles. Yes. Does Zotero work in Mozilla? Zotero is either a standalone product that you use as its own application for Windows or Mac, or it is a add-in to Firefox. So you can use it within Mozilla Firefox. It does not work in Chrome. I don't think there's an add-in for Chrome, but you can either use it as an add-in in Firefox, or you can use it in as a standalone thing all by itself. And if you want to hang out for a minute, I'll show you some of the features of Zotero that I like. Okay, and did you organize folders in Zotero and created the folders in a number system, blah, 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 blah. Do you organize folders in Zotero? I created folders in a number system, most relevant, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I create folders for the larger projects. So Lit Review, so I created a folder that was the references for my dissertation. And any article I actually used in the dissertation, I put into that folder. That way, when I cut and pasted it, I could create a whole bibliography at one time. I also was able to make sure that any citation I had, I knew where that article was. It was in the references folder for the dissertation. But you can create folders for all different topics that you're using. I create folders for different classes I'm teaching. But ultimately, the search function is what made everything wonderful for me. Okay, so that's all I have for you all. I'm going to go over Zotero for those of you who want to kind of stay behind and look at the Zotero. I'm going to go ahead and end this recording, though, because it's gone on too long.